So the fight between Sean Strickland and Hamza Chimaev happened over 2 weeks ago. And the world of MMA moves very fast. An event will happen, people will be talking about it, and a week later, another event happens. So new news becomes old news very fast. And whenever that fight happened, I was doing the whole audio only podcast thing that, I mentioned with the introduction of this channel. I figured by the time I get into the flow of creating videos for this channel, too much time will have passed, too many things will have happened, too many people have already spoken on the topic that there'd really be no reason for me to talk about this match. So I didn't really have any plans to do that. But even though we're over 2 weeks later, we are still seeing narratives that are coming out, new narratives where people complaining about the outcome of the fight and are trying to give their reasoning behind why Chimaev should have won that match, why Sean Strickland should not have won that match. And all of these points that I'm seeing are just absolutely ludicrous. And I'm not really seeing anybody coming out and breaking down all of those points and debunking all of them. Maybe a few of them, but I really think that people could do a better job of this. And it's just driving me crazy. All the stupid narratives that I see that are coming out when it comes to this fight. So I watched this fight and then I rewatched it where I was rewinding portions of it to really break things down and try to analyze it to really get a good understanding of this fight, why it came down the way it did come down, why it was scored the way it was scored, and why the results were the way that they were. And people are just coming out with every lame brain, salty excuse trying to justify why they think Chimaev should have won. So let's go through those points one by one, and I'm going to completely obliterate every single one of those points. Now, for starters, I'm not some Sean Strickland fanboy that wants to defend his honor. It's just whenever I see things that are really stupid, I need to call it out. But before we get into that, I just want to announce that I competed in jiu-jitsu this past Saturday, and, I had a lot of matches. There was some victory, there was some defeat, and I walked away with 2 silver medals and a sprained wrist. It was a fun time, and I can't wait to do it again. Don't worry, I'll heal up really quickly. I always do. So, before we get into breaking down each one of these points that I want to debunk, I first want to break down the match as a whole in a pretty succinct way. At least a few of the rounds, just so we could get them, behind us. So I think everybody, regardless of what side of the fence you're on, when it comes to who you think should have won this fight, I'm pretty sure everybody agrees on 3 rounds in particular, rounds 1, 2, and 4. If you don't agree with these points, then you're not even having the same conversation as everybody else. So there's really no point in trying to argue that. Everybody that is worth having an opinion anyway, believes that Chimaev won rounds 1 and round 4, and Strickland won round 2. So then we're left with 3 and 5. And those are the rounds that people are debating on. And that's what I'm going to talk about. So again, I want to elaborate. 1 and 4 go to Chimaev. 2 goes to Strickland. That means all Chimaev needs to do is win either the 3rd or the 5th, and he wins the whole fight. And Strickland has to win both those rounds. So we're going to break down both those rounds. So starting with round 3, whenever I first watched this match, I remember when I came off of round 3 thinking to myself, this was a pretty close round. It probably could have gone either way. And whenever you say that, you're like, well, then if someone gives it to Chimaev, then that would make sense because it was a close round. I noticed that all 3 of the judges had given it to Strickland. So when I went and rewatched that match, I was really watching with a keen eye. And my opinion changed on it from going, it was a close round that could go either way, to no, that was definitely Strickland's round. So I think the reason why myself and maybe a lot of people thought that round could have gone either way, it was close, and some people were trying to give it to Chimaev. And I think the reason why is because whenever you come off of rounds that are so one-sided, then you have one that's at least somewhat competitive, it shifts the perspective. So round 1 was Chimaev all day long. He took Strickland down, he controlled him, he took his back and basically just held him. He couldn't really do anything. There was, on paper, 0 significant strikes. There was at least one that I saw where Strickland punched over his shoulder and actually cut the bridge of Chimaev's nose, but whatever. It was a very one-sided round. Round 2, it's like maybe Chimaev had an adrenaline dump and he just couldn't really do anything, and Strickland just completely overworked him. everybody gave that one to Strickland. It was very easy round to score. Round 1, very easy round to score. Round 3 was the first round that was at least competitive. And I think because the first round's competitive, people are going to argue that, well, it could have gone either way. If you rewatch the match, you will see that Chimaev didn't really have any good grappling. If I remember correctly, he got a takedown late and wasn't able to do much with it. He wasn't able to get significant control time. He wasn't able to get a bunch of takedowns. He wasn't able to do any submission attacks. So really it's going to come down to the stand-up, because the most of that round was the stand-up. And some people argue, well, Chimaev broke his nose, so he should win on damage. While that is a point to consider, Chimaev was also taking a lot of damage as well. Strickland wasn't really aiming for the nose. He was more hitting the forehead and the eyes. And going into round 4, your boy's eyes and forehead were all bruised up. So really, the damage was close to equal. A broken nose could really be done from like one punch. The eyes and the forehead and all that purple all over, that's from a lot of punches. And if you actually look at the stats, and Luke Rockhold came out talking about this fight, says, well, the stats don't mean anything. I just can't deal with some people. If you look at the stats, that's actually the round. The third round is the round that Strickland landed the most strikes of any round in the entire fight. He actually outstruck Chimaev by a pretty significant portion in the third round. And I went back and rewatched that round. And like I said, I would rewind segments where there was a little striking exchange, and I would really look and see what's landing flush and what's not landing flush, and really who's landing more. That was Strickland's round. And if you disagree, you're just biased because you don't like him. So the damage, the broken nose, you could almost say the damage was nullified. There was no significant grappling. So it really comes down to the boxing, and Strickland was beating him to the punch. Literally, he outstruck him by a good bit. So that was absolutely Chimaev's round. So round 3, it was Strickland's round. So round 3 goes to Strickland. The damage was fairly equal in that round. So round 4, like I said, we all agree Chimaev wins that round. So now it goes to the 5th round. This round is actually the hardest one to score. And I'm not just saying that because the judges were split on this one. So 2 judges gave this one to Strickland. 1 judge gave it to Chimaev. So I went back and rewatched this one and really replayed everything. And this one's kind of weird when it comes to control time. Control time is one of those stats that I think people, to include judges, misuse a lot to give an advantage to someone that maybe doesn't really deserve it, but I digress. The point is, in this round you had, if I remember correctly, it was like 6 or 7 takedowns with 1 minute 31 seconds of control time. So a minute and a half of control time with a lot of takedowns. That means those takedowns were not really good takedowns. They weren't like the first round, whatever. He took Strickland down and got in charge of him, got in control of him, and was able to secure a dominant position. No, he more got Strickland down with a mat return, and Strickland ended up in like a tripod position, like hands and knees, and trying to get back up, and he would kind of fight his way back up, and Chimaev would trip him back down. He'd be on his hands and knees and get back up. That's not really a full-on takedown. In jiu-jitsu, those would not even be considered takedowns. You wouldn't even get points on those because you need to like really get someone down and get them in a secure position. If you just kind of trip them down where they're not all the way upright, that's not really a takedown. So he has a minute and a half of control time, but in that control time, what did he do? See, this is what I was saying earlier about control time is sometimes misused. Not all control time is the same. If I'm controlling you for, let's say, 2 minutes, and I am punching you, I am attacking with submissions, I'm doing work, I'm putting forth offense, that's really good control time. But if I'm controlling you for 2 minutes and I'm doing nothing, that's not good control time. Yes, I get the stat of I had more control time, but if I'm just laying on you and holding you down and doing nothing, and you are doing everything you can from bottom to attack back, even though you're not in the dominant position, you're still attacking more, you're going to be the winner of that exchange. And I'll give you a great example of that. Jailton Almeida versus Alexander Volkov. Go back and watch that fight. Volkov got taken down at will by Almeida. Almeida would get on top of him, control him, and then do what? Nothing. He did absolutely nothing. And then so from his back, Volkov in a very vulnerable position was just swinging up from the bottom and punching Almeida in the head. It was not the most impressive way to fight, but at least he was doing something. And I know that years ago, they would have probably given that one to Almeida because judges were very biased in favor of wrestlers back then. And any amount of control time that was more than the other person would often get you the round. But we're not in that era anymore. We want to see action. We want to see you do something with that control time. And that's not what happened. Almeida laid on Volkov, lay and pray, no ground and pound, no submission attacks. And he lost that fight, justifiably so, because he was doing nothing with that control time. Likewise, in that minute and a half of control time that Chimaev had over Strickland in round 5, he did nothing. He couldn't even fully secure the position. He had a back body lock, would trip him down. We called it a mat return. And Strickland was never all the way down. Like I said, we call it a tripod position. You're on hands and knees. You got 3 points of contact. You kind of fight your way back up, trip back down again. Just kept doing that over and over for a minute and a half, was not able to land any significant strikes, was not able to attack any submissions whatsoever. Strickland gets away finally, recenters, and they go back to boxing. And for the next 3.5 minutes, Strickland outboxes Chimaev. Once again, looking at the stats, and I know Luke Rockhold says stats don't matter. He's one of those people that is siding with Chimaev here. Also a teammate of Chimaev's. Anyway. So if you have a minute and a half of control time, and in that minute and a half, you do nothing with it, no significant strikes, no submission attacks, you don't even fully get your opponent in a really bad, vulnerable position. You're just hugging on his back and tripping him over and over for a minute and a half. And then the other 3.5 minutes, you're just getting outworked on the feet. You're not winning that round. So that means Strickland also wins round 5. So now you have 1, 3, and 5 for Strickland. But there are still more excuses here. People want to give these excuses about why they think round 3 should have went this way or round 5 should have went this way. Instead of breaking it down round by round, one thing that they're doing is they're bringing up these cherry-picked set of stats where you have significant strikes landed, takedowns, control time, and advancing is the term I think they showed. So that graphic went out there. For the record, there's a lot more stats to look at when you break down how a fight was played out, not just those, but they cherry picked those and they pointed out that in 3 of those categories, Chimaev was ahead on the takedowns and the control time because he's a wrestler. That's what he does. Strickland being the boxer, he outlanded by a significant amount. He outstruck him. But a lot of people are hung up on this whole advancing thing. Oh, he was advancing more. So a lot of people said this. Henry Cejudo said this. Luke Rockhold said this. I think Bobby Green said this. Kamaru Usman said this. A whole bunch of people were saying that you cannot win striking exchanges if you're backing up. Because they said even though Strickland was landing more punches whenever they were striking, when they were having those boxing exchanges, Chimaev was advancing. He's coming at him. He's coming forward. So how can you say Strickland's winning that whenever he's backing up and jabbing the whole time? And several of them said because it is impossible to win a striking exchange while backing up and jabbing, as if that's never happened before, as if Muhammad Ali doesn't exist. Yeah, that's a narrative that professional fighters are pointing out, that you can't back up and strike, as if counter strikers don't exist. You can absolutely fight off the back foot. It changes the style. You're not going to have as much knockout power. And it's actually a good tactical move. Chael Sonnen pointed this out. He was talking about this fight, and he said it was a tactical move for Strickland to be backing up because he said in wrestling, for wrestling to happen, both guys have to be going forward. If anyone's backing up, wrestling can't happen. There has to be, forward pressure for wrestling to happen. So if you are striking with a wrestler, the last thing you want to do is be walking towards him because you're walking into a shoot and get taken down. So you stick and you keep on. You could back or you could go sideways. You keep moving in a way that doesn't allow him, Chimaev that is, to come forward, press into you and take you down. So that's the other one that I want to debunk, is the whole advancing thing. The fact that Chimaev was backpedaling, that he was retreating, that you can't win exchanges. Go research Muhammad Ali, because apparently none of these fighters have ever heard of him. You know, one of the greatest boxers of all time, who was very famous for doing just that. Most of his career was fighting off the back foot. He liked to step back and work the jab. He would have you come towards him. He would bait you to come at him. And whenever they would go at him, he'd be popping with the jab. He would then come forward whenever he felt the timing was right, when he had him hurt or something. But the majority of his tools were jabbing off the back foot. So this whole narrative of you can't win fights while stepping backwards is absolute nonsense. And it shows that you have no knowledge of the striking game, of the boxing game. And you really don't need to be debating this conversation, you know? Another one that I'm seeing was the weight cut. Well, you got to understand that Chimaev thought he was going to be fighting at light heavyweight, so he bulked up a whole bit, and then he found out he was going to have another fight, and so he had to do a big drastic weight cut. There were some arguments over whether he actually made weight or not, whatever. But the only reason why he was not able to fight the way he should have been able to fight was because of the bad weight cut, right? Well, whose fault is that? Because at the end of the day, taking care of your body is also a big portion of being a professional fighter, your conditioning. So if you're not maintaining your weight, if you're not talking to your team and talking to your managers and talking to the UFC, finding out who your next opponent really is, and you're not managing your weight right, whose fault is that? You know? So I don't know what else there is to say on that topic. Like, so many people were complaining, well, he was just drained. He wasn't fighting like his normal self because, you know, he had a really bad weight cut. He had to cut too much weight. Then he shouldn't be fighting at that weight. Either he shouldn't be fighting at that weight or needs to be more disciplined with his weight control so he doesn't have to cut such a crazy amount and mess up his gas tank, basically. So that's on him. That comes down to his physical conditioning. That comes down to making sure that you're prepared for the fight. That doesn't take away from Sean Strickland's performance over him. So another point that I wanted to bring up is a lot of people are saying that it's not so much that Sean won the fight, it's that Chimaev lost the fight. As if like Chimaev is so much better that it's really just, if he makes a mistake, he loses, has nothing to do with, you know, Strickland actually showing that he's a good fighter. I was saying this whenever I was doing the podcast. Now, this fight was going to be a competitive fight. I never said that Sean was going to mow through Chimaev. For the record, for those of you that don't know, I was doing predictions on the podcast, and I had actually predicted that Sean Strickland was going to win this match. I said it was going to be close. I said it was going to be a decision. I said I wasn't super confident in it because I recognize that Chimaev is a very good fighter, and it could go either way, and I'm leaning towards Sean. Sean is one of the best defensive fighters in all of the UFC, and I said that he was a bad stylistic matchup for Chimaev because of his defense, because of his grappling defense, and because he is a good counter striker, which is, if I needed to build the perfect fighter to counter Chimaev, because styles do make fights, it would basically be Sean Strickland. Probably a slightly better version of Sean Strickland, like give him a little more knockout power so it's more definitive, but basically just that. Someone has really good grappling defense and really good counter striking, which is what Strickland has. So people are saying that, oh, it wasn't that Sean was so good and won the fight, it's that Chimaev lost the fight. No, he went against somebody who was a bad stylistic matchup, and he was not prepared for the fight, and Strickland was prepared for the fight, and the results were what they were. Now, here's one that really drives me crazy. It has irked me for years before this fight was even booked or announced. This is another narrative that I want to shut down right now. It just pisses me off, to be honest with you. The whole notion of to beat the champ, you have to beat the champ. It can't be close. You know, you can't have someone just squeak by with the win over the champion. You have to definitively beat him to take the title. That is utter bullshit. So whenever a fight, whether there's a title on the line or not, when a fight happens, they go into the ring or the cage, wherever it's taking place, and they're held to the same exact standard. If a title's on the line, the winner gets the title. If it's a draw, the champion keeps it. If it's a no contest, champion keeps it. It really irks me when people push this narrative of if you're the champion, you should get some preferential treatment from the judges. Because that's basically what that's saying. Either you're supposed to get preferential treatment from the judges, or if it is really close, like a 48-47 or a split decision, that the champion should still win the fight. Can you explain to me the logic behind that, how that's supposed to work? So, judges 1 and 2 give it to Strickland. Judge 3 gives it to Chimaev. But because Chimaev's champion, we are awarding him the win anyway. Like, how do you announce that? Or are the judges supposed to be like, okay, look, I kind of want to give the Stricklands. I think he did better, but he only did a little bit better, so I'm going to give it to Chimaev anyway. So you want corrupt judges, or you want a flawed system where you're purposely awarding the person who lost the fight with the victory? One or the other happens with that notion. And that whole idea is why we have controversial moments like John Jones winning over Reyes, for example. We've actually seen this before where there's been champions or maybe just people in good graces with the organization who probably shouldn't have won that fight, but they did because of who they were. It shouldn't be happening, is what I'm getting at. So whenever this fight happens and you're like, maybe Strickland did do good enough where he probably should have won 3 rounds, but it was so close we should have just given it to Chimaev anyway. Just stop talking. Just stop. And on top of that, whenever Strickland lost his title in the first place against Dricus du Plessis, it was also to a split decision. So by your own logic, that means he should have never lost the title in the first place, which means that Dricus du Plessis would have lost that match and didn't deserve that immediate rematch. So that means that fight would have never happened. So it would have just been Strickland still holding the title, which meant he would have one title defense against Paulo Costa, another title defense against Flavio Hernandez, and then now another title defense against Chimaev. Because the split decision and he's still champion, he should still be champion. Because you can't just take the title off of a champion, right? According to your own logic, Sean Strickland never lost the title in the first place and has 3 title defenses now. And I know that's not the case because that's not how it works. Don't be stupid, all right? So the whole to beat the champion, you have to beat the champion. It's rubbish. Stop saying it. It has no place in a legitimate sport. I want you to imagine if you're watching another sport, right? Let's say football, and you have the team that won the Super Bowl last year, and they go on another killer run the following year. They're about to two-peat. They're about to repeat and get another title. So they're the defending champions for the Super Bowl, but the other team wins in overtime by a field goal, last minute clutch move. And then the commission comes out and like, good job, other team, but you only squeaked by the team that was the defending champion. So they're going to win anyway. So I'm sorry, you're going to take an L and you don't get the championship. That's literally, as stupid as that sounds, exactly the same narrative of to beat the champion, you have to really beat the champion. So you could just stop with that nonsense. So those are all the points that I wanted to make when it came to this narrative of all the different excuses of, the reason why Chimaev should have won. I just really wanted to break those down and debunk them all. And that was going to be my whole video right there. Those are all the points I wanted to make. But as I'm planning this video, a new excuse came out that I just have to address. So I saw a screenshot of a tweet from Chimaev, and I went to go find it to see if it's legitimate because there's so many fake tweets out there that I can't really trust what I see anymore on other social media platforms. So I went to go find it and I couldn't find it. It was later said that he deleted it. So I still don't know for sure if he posted this, but at the very least I saw MMA Joey. We all know how stupid he is. We saw MMA Joey making the same point. So whether Chimaev said it or not, there is still a new narrative out there that I need to address. So the new excuse on top of the bad weight cut, it was rigged, he was robbed, it should have been 4-1. You can't win by backing up and jabbing. You can't beat the champion whenever it's a really close match, yada, yada, yada. After all of those excuses, the new one is it was an American fighter in an American event, American location with American judges. So they just gave it to the American. Now, to be fair, I have seen a lot of fights in other countries, England, Brazil, Australia, where the judges do seem to favor, the home crowd fighters a little bit. But the thing is, UFC is an organization based out of the United States. The majority of the roster are American. So the majority of the referees and judges and people at the commission and all those people are going to be American just because it's an American organization. That's how it works, obviously. If you go back and look at the history of all the close fights, the split decisions, there's going to be all kinds of ways that has gone in favor of or not in favor of the American. So that excuse doesn't hold water. It may be something to look into if a big fight happens in another country. I'm not saying this to sound like nationalistic or anything like that. It's just something we've seen. When you have a smaller pool of fighters from a certain country and you're fighting in that country and you kind of load that card with people and the judges for some reason all give it to that one side, it does look a little bit suspicious. But with American fighters, you can't really do that. There's too many American fighters. Too many of them go to decision. You can't just keep on giving them all the wins because they're American. That just wouldn't work. It wouldn't make any sense. That's not what happened here. That's just another excuse. Whenever those other excuses they made were all starting to lose their merit and they weren't getting anywhere with it, they had to look for something new. So that's the new one that they came up with. They pointed out, oh, it's American fighter, American location, American judges. So shenanigans, right? What excuse is next? Am I going to have to do a part 2 of this video to, debunk more of them? Because I can keep doing this all day. Like I said, go watch the fight for yourself. Like I said, 1, 2, and 4, we all agree on. 3 and 5 are the ones that were at least more competitive. And I told you exactly why it was scored the way it was scored. Both those rounds, why they were scored the way they were scored. Go watch for yourself, see what I'm talking about, and come to your own conclusions. All this other nonsense about, well, it needs to be more definitive. You can't be winning exchanges while backing up. You can't just squeak by the champion on a split decision. All that's nonsense. If this was any fight, no title on the line, you didn't know these fighters, don't have any preferential treatment towards them, and if you broke down round for round for round and really look at every single exchange, who did what and when, if you have any sense about you, you would have it 3 rounds for Strickland. Anything else? If you disagree, go ahead and comment, and I will be glad to discuss that with any of you. But I just keep seeing all the excuses come out, and I really wanted to debunk every single one of these one by one. And if more excuses come out, I'll be here to debunk them. So anyway, this is Vince with Vince by Submission, and I'll see you all on the next topic.